Hi, I'm Wisetola, and as you already know, I've been speaking to the wonderful Elena Head. She is one, and she is one with somebody else, and that's with the amazing Dennis Head. So I'd like to introduce Dennis to the show, and Dennis is going to tell us all about how he met this wonderful woman and everything else that pertains to the both of them as they became one. Hi Dennis, how are you today?
Very good.
So tell us, how did you meet Elena? I've met Elena. Elena is exciting, she's bubbly, Elena is just the wow factor, and I like everything about her. Everything that she has said has blessed me so far. How did you come across meeting her?
Actually, we met in church, and the amazing thing is that she actually saw me before I saw her. We have a common friend, and this lady had called Elaine. They were friends, used to work together, and she called Elaine and she said, "Why don't you come to our church this Sunday? We have a guest speaker." You knew the guest speaker, and so it was a little bit of a reunion. Anyway, I was single, and this lady's mother ran into me, and she said, "Why don't you come over to our house? We're going to have a little reception, and kind of an after-church thing." And so I said, fine. And I had with me a pastor from India, and I had just been involved in one of his miracle crusades where we saw blind people see, deaf ears open, just an incredible signs and wonders experience. And so this man was with me, and so the girl's mom invited both of us. And so when we showed up at the house, I knocked on the door, and this girl's dad answered the door, and the pastor was with me, and I had a cassette tape. And I said, "Do you have a cassette player where we could play this tape for everybody?" And the father kind of looked at me. I'd never met him before, but he kind of harumphed, if you will, and he motioned over toward a boom box that had just been set up on their shelf. And he said, "Well, the problem is we've only had this 3 days. We've plugged it in. It's very simple, but nobody can make it come on." And I said, "Has anybody laid hands on it?" And he just looked at me, pulled back a little bit. And I went over, and with my finger, I touched the corner of the speaker cabinet and said, "Be healed in Jesus' name." And that thing came right on. Well, Elaine was in the room, and she saw that. And I believe.
I heard it.
Yeah, and I think you said that, ooh, faith.
Faith. Somebody who has faith.
Actually, when you think about it, I should have gone into small appliance repair, but I didn't do that. And even I was amazed that this had happened, but it was sort of that same miracle thing was happening, and that Spirit walks with us. I sort of appropriated, if you will, at that crusade. But I began to realize that the Lord would walk with us, and He could make a way where there was no way. And I was just becoming almost like a new babe, if you will. I was just, everything that the Bible said, I believed. Everything that Jesus told us we could do, I started doing. And I wasn't really allowing myself the benefit of rationality or normality. I was just walking and doing and being exactly what it had suggested. So it was amazing. Well, Elaine and I met at that meeting. I was just incredibly fascinated with this mighty woman of God. Now, it wasn't so much a man-woman dating. What are you looking at me for? It wasn't like that. I fell head over heels, but it wasn't so much smitten in a romantic sense. Mm-hmm. I met a woman who'd been out doing the work of the Lord, and it was just incredible. Every one of her stories. You've heard some of them already. She sees things, she acts on them. God's promises are always true, and in your life you were experiencing it. So we would be on the phone for hours, almost at the end of every day. We would sort of close our day. You lived, what, about 100 miles away from me? So our conversations were over the phone. And then this went on for about 3 months. We saw each other several times, always in the context of ministry. But the most amazing thing happened. You guys got to listen to this. The most amazing thing happened is that on her birthday, I had invited her to come down to our church. This is the same church you and I met at. And I invited her to come down because we were going to, it was in Southern California, so our church as a group was going to take a couple of buses, and we were going to go see Azusa Street, and where Amy Semple McPherson had started her Foursquare Church at Angeles Temple. And so it was kind of a church outing to visit hot spots of church history. And as I remember, it was $35 for your ticket.
36.
36. So I said, if you come down, I'll buy your ticket, and we can do this together. So that morning, as she's driving to meet me, I felt that I heard the Lord speak. And he said, have you considered Elaine? Now, believe it or not, I had considered Elaine, but I didn't really know what that question meant. What's it mean to consider somebody? But I knew I heard from God. It's actually kind of a rattling or an upsetting experience. And so even after she shows up, and we're sort of doing our thing that day, I was just so disturbed because I didn't really understand the question. Have I considered Elaine? I thought, for what? Does she need money? Does she need some support? Does she need something? And I just really didn't get it. And all day long, we'd been together, and we were with a group of people. And finally, toward the end of the day, it's almost sunset, we'd run by my house again. The day was just about completed. And we ran by my house, and I just felt compelled. I just kind of left her at the door for a minute. I just had stopped by to get something. And I went out onto the balcony. And this is in Southern California. There's palm trees and an ocean off in the distance. And I just stepped on the balcony, and I raised my hands, and I bowed my head, and I said, Lord, have I considered her for what? And I heard the Lord said, to be your wife. Well, that was like it shot through me. And it actually had, in a way, scared me, because you were too precious for me to just think of boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. We had never touched hands. I'd never held her hand. I never even got to shake her hand or give her anything. I mean, this was a relationship between a man who respected highly this woman of God. And again, my relationship and efforts with her was I was listening to her, learning from her. But when the Lord said to be your wife, I thought, oh my gosh. And I thought, I don't even really know her. I mean, that was a scary thing. But I knew the Lord was with me, and I thought, well, okay, well, I'll start dating her. He said, no. And he showed me immediately this picture of Abraham sending his servant out to find a wife for Isaac. And he said, if you want my best, you'll ask her today on her birthday. And I'm thinking about that. And he said, no, wait a minute. When Isaac saw Rebekah for the first time, he didn't say, oh, Dad, I wish I had a blonde. I mean, what was that experience? Isaac respected that his father brought his choice for his son to him. And the father made all of the efforts to get the best he could get for his son, because he knew that the blessings that had been promised to him and to his successive generations were dependent upon having a woman. And in fact, an agent of multiplication. A man can give a woman his seed, but she turns it into a child. A man can give a woman a house, but she turns it into a home. And so immediately I started seeing the dynamic here, in that all the promises of God to Abraham and then to his children's children would never come to pass unless there was a woman involved. And so when Abraham sent Gehazi, I think it was his servant, when he sent his servant out, he gave him his name. He loaded him up with camels and wealth. He sent his name, his money, his reputation, and every one of the promises of God were dependent upon this woman. And I saw that. And I saw how incredibly important it was for us to understand that we really, in Christian circles, should allow ourselves to embrace arranged marriages. Now, when we hear this in other cultures, we go, oh, that's crazy. What about romance? I mean, you know, kids shouldn't be like marrying kids and all that. I mean, there's a great objection for the most part on arranged marriages. But if you think about it, you really want an arranged marriage. You want the one that the Lord chose for you. So I'm sitting there going, okay, so we're not dating. I said, well, I'll just take her to dinner. And he said, no, I'm a Jew, and the sun is setting. You've got about 5 minutes. Now my heart's pounding. I'm going, okay, there's no dating. I've never touched this girl's hand. I've never kissed her. Okay, this is God's choice for me. and now I got it. It's immediate. And then I hang up and I walk to the other end of my balcony and I kind of bow my head and I go, "Was that you, God?" And immediately I felt the Spirit, and I looked. I could see the sun setting over the horizon. I thought, "Oh my gosh!" So I ran in, and Elena's standing there looking at this kooky man. In fact, what'd you say? You were getting ready to leave right in the middle of that.
I could just see you pacing the balcony. I thought, I'm going to get my purse and my keys and go home. Something's weird here.
But instead I walked up and I said, "I want to ask you to be my wife." And she just looked at me. And I said, I think I just heard God. And I know that we don't really know each other that way, but I really felt like the Lord said it was important that I ask you today on your birthday. And she looked at me. Now this is the most amazing thing. About 6 months earlier, and I'd only known you for about 3, but about 6 months earlier, Elaine had been pursued by these gentleman callers. She had about 6, maybe even 7, had said, "Hey baby, you're the one. I know God's in it." And she just didn't know how to reconcile it. Well, I saw this in your diary. She'd written in her diary, she said, "Oh Lord, I want an Isaac, not an Ishmael. How will I know which one? Would you please show me your choice for me by my birthday?"
And how many years ago was that?
Not enough. We've been married for almost 14 years. Elaine had called for this decision on her birthday. I had never heard that. I didn't know it. And so when the two of us recognized that the Lord was in this relationship, we've begun to, obviously we got married, but the important thing is that we don't allow ourselves the benefit of even argument. Because if God's in it, then what are we doing with strife and division? And I've learned not so much to submit or defer to Elaine, but we have both learned to submit and defer to the Lord together.
That's it. That's it.
Don't you think that's
it?
And we think this is a good message for people. Elaine started this process off by saying, "Lord, I want your choice for me." I started this process off by going, "Lord, I want you and only what you have for me." And I think that is the beginning of a relationship. And maybe the final thought on this is that both of us understand that in our relationship, we're establishing and actually learning and training for the relationship with Jesus. If I'm ultimately part of the bride, then I need to take the same relationship with him that I have with Elaine. And that is of serving, of caring, of deferring. And if you can't do a good job in marriage when you've got all of the physical attributes and the physical benefits, then how are you going to do a real good job with Jesus? And I think he gives us marriage as a training for a relationship with him.
So Dennis, I want to ask you, what is the secret of a good marriage?
Oh my gosh. Now, Elaine, calm down for a second. I found out that the secret of a good marriage is when a man treats his wife like dirt.
Wow. And you're going to explain that, aren't you?
The Bible says, "As a man soweth, so shall he reap." And it was really in going back and studying the root word of mother that I found out that mother and the word mud are actually related. And they actually go back to the concept of fertility or of soil. And the word for man and the word for the Father, God, actually was the source or seed. And so here we have two components that come together. We have the male or the gender of male being identified with seed, and we have the gender of woman being identified with soil or mud or mother. And so I found that the secret in my life is to sow into Elaine's life the very things that I want. Respect, for example. If I will sow respect into her life, I can certainly expect to receive respect back. But even if you don't pay me respect, when people see me respect my wife, I get respect from the world. And so I can sow into her life all the things that I want. And we all know that men are generally kind of selfish. So all you got to do is think about the things you want. Find something that is appropriate as a seed, and I can sow it. And so when we sow compassion and respect, consideration, love, we get it back. And for me, I think almost every man, if you had to give him a piece of paper and ask him for all the things that he wants, that God somewhere in his life is providing a seed for it. I think it's in Isaiah. It says, for your iron and for your brass, I'll give you silver and gold. And it says if you don't have iron and brass, you can use a stone or wood, and I'll convert that to iron and brass. And that iron and brass can subsequently be resown for silver and gold. This is the concept here. And wherever a man goes in this world, he's going to find one of two things, and most often together. He's going to find stones, and he's going to find wood. God gives seed to the sower. There's always going to be an opportunity for any man out there to find a seed that he can sow that will come back to him multiplied. And the greatest agent of multiplication is the woman that he brings into our life. And so, Elaine, don't you find that what I sow in your life, I reap pretty quickly?
You do.
Now, it also works the other way. I remember one day we had this argument, and I don't know, we learn it with children. I did a timeout. I just left the room, shut the door. Only happened that I walked out the front door. And she thought I was going to get in the car and go off to do something naughty. Instead, I just stood there. And then I heard the door click. And I realized that she locked it as I walked out, and I didn't have the keys. Well...
And it was cold out there.
And it was cold. I had my cell phone, so I called her, and it was at night. You'd already gotten to bed. And when I walked back in, I realized that in the moment that I left, my anger and everything evaporated. But it continued to fester with you, didn't it? And there are examples when if we have an argument, I may be able to just get over it really quickly, but I see that it stays with her, and it just festers and festers. So we're pretty quick to resolve our problems, aren't we?
We are. We are. And that night that he walked out, and I locked the door, I thought, great, I'm going to have some peace now. And I got in bed, got a book, and started reading, and the phone rings. Oh, so you're locked out, huh? But it's cold out here, really. So I took a few minutes to get to the door. But he never left again. So we really learn behavior that's acceptable and not acceptable, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Now, you know what, there was one time that we did have an argument, and I left, and by the time I had my key in the car, I was over it. So I went to the hardware store, and I played around for a little while, and I came back, and it's like, I opened the door, and it's like, yeah, that thing had grown. So, I think the key to a successful marriage, it's not a 50-50 relationship between two equals, and I'm afraid that really flies against a lot of people's whatever they call it, their expectation. I actually believe that men have the keys to the successful relationship in their hand, because a woman's going to give him back anything he sows. And it's really difficult sometimes in this world of liberation to give back all that power to a man. But I would give it back to a man. I'm telling you right now, if you expect her to cut a deal with you in the heart of the heat of an argument, or think that I'm not going to do it unless she, whatever, those kind of conditional statements ruin marriage. Men, it's up to you. You sow love, you sow compassion, you show respect, you show and give the very things that you want back. I'm telling you, an agent of multiplication almost has no choice. The earth cannot take an apple seed and turn it into an orange. And women are not going to fight you too long on you sowing the good things. But if you sow bad, you're certainly going to get it back. And so I feel that women are responders typically. And I think men, being initiators, we need to understand that a good marriage starts with the husband. It doesn't start with a perfect, pure woman. She's an agent of multiplication. You start sowing into her life the things you want, and you're going to get it back from her.
That is so true. And I'm so glad I heard that. And I really do hope my husband is watching and listening. Thank you very much, Dennis and Elaine Head. I'm Wisetola. You've been watching Wisetola Speaks Too. Thank you very much for joining me. Catch you next week.